Hello everyone and welcome to Curious About Our Planet Festival. I'm Caitlin from Glasgow Science Centre and today we're going to be joined by Fiona Maguire from North Lanarkshire Council to talk about air pollution. So we're going to pass over to Fiona who will give us a presentation for around 10 minutes or so and then go on to a Q&A session. So if you have any questions, pop them in the chat below and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can in this session. So I'll pass over to Fiona now. Hi.
Hi Caitlin, thank you. So good morning everyone. My name's Fiona Maguire, as Caitlin said, and I'm one of the Senior Environmental Health Officers for North Lanarkshire Council. So hello especially to any North Lanarkshire schools out there, as well to everyone else. So I work in the Pollution and Public Health team, and the main focus of our work is to help maintain and improve the environment in our local area and community. Could I have the next slide, please? So, clean air is very important to us. Well, why? Well, because it's the air that we breathe, and anything in that air finds its way into our body and moves through our bloodstream and into all of our major organs. And, in case you hadn't noticed, you can't just stop breathing. We need air to live, so we need to look after this air that we breathe. So where does air pollution come from? Well, there used to be lots of factories and manufacturing works in Scotland's towns and cities, and the air was really polluted from the smoky chimneys associated with these factories. Today, however, almost all of these industries have gone, but we still have areas where the air quality is not as good as it could be because of pollution. This air pollution is now mostly from vehicles and transport, so cars, vans, lorries and buses, but there's also still some pollution from coal and wood fires, and from some industry, depending where you live. We can also get pollution blown in from other areas in other countries even. An example of this was smoke particles blown in from forest fires in Europe a few summers ago. And sometimes we even get dust blown in from the Sahara Desert, believe it or not. Next slide, please. So scientists and air quality experts over the years have recognised how important good air quality is, and the World Health Organization has set limits for certain harmful pollutants in the air. And these air pollution limits have been made into law in many countries, including Scotland, because it's recognised that if pollution is kept within these limits, then our air is safe. Part of my job is to make sure these air pollution limits are stuck to, and we monitor in North Lanarkshire to make sure that we can comply with this law. So let's look now at some of the important air pollutants. So, nitrogen dioxide. This is a gas, reddish brown in colour, and it's made up of nitrogen and oxygen molecules. Nitrogen dioxide forms in the air from the exhaust emissions from cars, buses, trucks, and from power plants. Breathing in nitrogen dioxide is bad for you because it can cause irritation of your nose and the throat, causing you to cough and make your cough any existing conditions such as asthma worse. Next slide, please. So another pollutant that we monitor is called particulate matter, or PM. So basically these are tiny particles in the air, little specks of dust that float around in the air of all different types. So we just call it PM, and we look at the two different sizes of PM usually, PM10 and PM2.5. The number relates to the size of the particle. And to put it into context, one PM10 particle is about the width, the seventh of the width of a normal human hair. So tiny. They can't be seen by the naked eye, and you would need a microscope or a magnifying glass to see them. When you breathe in PM10, the fine particles can be carried deep into the lungs and even into the bloodstream, where they can trigger asthma attacks and increase the risk of heart attacks and strokes, particularly if you have any pre-existing weaknesses in the heart and lungs. So how do we monitor and measure how much pollution is in our air and if it's at a safe level? Well, part of my job is to install equipment to measure air pollution, and to do this we use different types of equipment. This slide shows a picture of one type, which is called an automatic monitor. This has a permanent power supply, so it's plugged in and has a pump at the top which draws in a sample of the air, which is then analysed by a machine inside the cabinet, and a reading is provided of the level of pollutants in that air sample drawn in. So these automatic monitors run all the time, so they're switched on 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and that can let us see if air pollution is worse at a certain time of the day or even at a certain time of the year, because air pollution is affected by the weather and it's different for the different seasons of the year. So sometimes you can have you can see the levels are high at a certain time of the day and try and work out what's causing that. So it can show you how high the levels are at rush hour. It can also show you how high the levels are under different types of weather conditions. So because of air pollution being affected by the weather, we look at it as an average over the year. So the results from these automatic monitoring stations are downloaded several times a day. So you pretty much can look at pollution as it happens or as it's just happened, and you can view all the data online at a special dedicated website. This is www.scottishairquality.scot. Maybe later you can go to this website and find where the nearest automatic monitor is to your school and see what the levels are like. So every year, the council has to write up a report to send to SEPA and the Scottish Government with all the air pollution monitoring for the year. And if you look on if you contact your local environmental health department, you could have a look at that report if you're extra interested. So part of my job also in trying to protect people from poor air pollution is to look at where houses and other developments such as factories and supermarkets are going to be built to try and make sure. Sorry, could you go back to the previous slide? Thank you. To make sure they're not going to be built in an area where the air quality is not as good as it could be, or if the development is going to bring a lot of traffic to an area where the air quality is currently quite good. So sometimes we might ask developers to put in measures to reduce the air pollution that might be associated with their planned development. This is called mitigation, and it could involve moving the housing further away from the source of pollution, further away from a road, for example, or by asking for other measures to be put in place for a new housing estate, such as areas where people can easily walk and cycle so that they can choose to do that rather than just using the car. So this is really called placemaking, and basically that is working to create public spaces that promote people's health, happiness and well-being, and air pollution is a consideration in this. Okay, next slide. So what can we do to reduce air pollution? Well, one of the things I enjoy doing in my job is to help raise awareness of air pollution and let people realise that they can help keep the air that we breathe clean. Everyone can play their part to reduce air pollution. Here's some examples of how you can help reduce air pollution in your area. So firstly, you could walk, cycle or scooter to school instead of going by car. Now, I do know that you might need to go by car if you're dropping brothers or sisters at nursery, or if your mum or dad are going to work after they drop you off. So sometimes you can't help if you need to take the car to school, and that's all right. But sometimes you could leave the car at home maybe for one of the less important journeys, maybe at the weekend. So if you're going to a club or if you're going to the park or just to the shop locally, you could leave the car at home. Even one less car journey a week, it can make a difference if a lot of people do that. So if you have to go by car, you can travel at less busy times. You could use public transport or car share, and you could go at quieter times when the roads are not as busy. The other thing you can do is when you're waiting outside somewhere, maybe somebody's running into a shop or something, try not to idle, switch the car engine off so that the engine isn't running when you don't need it to. So at home, you can save energy by putting lights off when you leave a room, turning the heating down and turning off appliances when you're not using them. And finally, keeping bonfires and garden burning to a minimum, because all that, although it doesn't seem like much, and it is out in the open air, it does still add to air pollution. So I've worked with schools over the years where we have done things like designing banners to encourage drivers at the school pickup not to sit with their engines running. We've done traffic counts outside the school to see the levels and types of traffic around the school, as well as having an air monitor installed outside your school. Sometimes that can be available depending on where you live. I've also worked with a number of schools on the activities in the dedicated air quality learning package, which is www.learnaboutair.com. And some of this work is done on the National Day dedicated to preventing air pollution, which is known as Clean Air Day. This happens every year, and this year's Clean Air Day is happening very soon, on Thursday the 16th of June. You could contact your local environmental health department to find out if there's anything happening for Clean Air Day in your area. I hope this talk has helped you to understand a bit more about air pollution and how we can all play our part to tackle the problem of how to keep our air clean. Thanks for tuning in.
That was great, Fiona. Thank you so much for sharing. And just a reminder to our audience as well, if you've got any questions, you can pop them in the comments box below. But I think we'll move on to our Q&A session. So here's our first question. So I heard there's now low emission zones in some cities around Scotland. Can you tell me a bit about what these are and how it affects air pollution levels? Oh, I think Fiona might be muted. Oh, Fiona, could you unmute your microphone? Sorry, Fiona, I don't think we can hear you at the moment. I think we're getting our technical support on it. Okay, I think we've got it there.
That is
Brilliant.
better now.
That's it now, yeah.
I'm sorry. Although I'm very good at environmental health, I'm not very good with technical things.
Don't worry at all. That's why we've got the support here. So yeah, let's head back to that question.
Will I answer that question now on low emission zones? Okay, I'm sorry about this. Right, okay, low emission zones. You're right, yes, there soon will be 4 low emission zones in Scotland in the 4 major cities of Glasgow, Edinburgh, Aberdeen and Dundee. So a low emission zone is a mapped area of the city where the most polluting vehicles are not allowed to drive in. So there's not going to be a big barrier to say they can't come in. What will happen is if they do come in, a note's taken of their registration number plate and they will be fined, and there's a fine is sent out to the driver of the vehicle. So in the first one to come in is going to be Glasgow, and I believe it's coming in just now, but with enforcement and the fines actually starting in a year's time, so in June 2023, sorry. So if the most polluting vehicles are not allowed into the city, then consequently the air will become cleaner.
That's great to know. Thank you for sharing that. I think we're ready for another question. So do trees and plants help improve our air quality?
Well, yes, actually they do. So there's quite a lot of research at the moment about plants and trees helping to reduce air pollution, and there's more and more studies looking into this. So it's been found that certain types of trees can play a really vital role in directly removing pollutants from the air. So when I was talking about particles, the PM, particulate matter, that can get trapped on the tiny waxy, hairy parts of the leaves and trees and shrubs. And then when the rain comes along, it washes it down into the drains and away. So there's still quite a lot of studies being done about which trees and shrubs are better. Some will be better than others. But for example, they found that silver birch, yew trees and elder trees are good at reducing this, the levels of particulate matter.
That's really great to hear. Thank you. So how did you get into your job and what subjects were most interesting to you at school?
So when I was at school, which was many moons ago now, I was very interested in the sciences. So and I was a bit of an environmentalist even back then as well. So I was really looking for a career that combined something that would let me study and keep try to make the environment round about us better. So I was looking what career could I possibly have? So I found environmental health, and because it was very much to do with it's still science, but it's to do with the local area. So you're really trying to help to make a difference where in the local area, people's immediate environment. So I had to go to university and study the subject of environmental health. And I don't know if any of you know about environmental health, but it does cover a whole lot of different subjects. Um, from inspecting school kitchens to health and safety to housing and different things like that. However, after I graduated and went to actually work in the job, I really found I was most interested in the pollution side of things, so I specialised in that. So if you're looking to go into this type of job, you would really need to like chemistry and science. You also have to be good at talking to people and obviously trying to just basically get people sometimes to do things that they're not keen on doing. So, for example, leaving the car at home to make air pollution better. So yeah, that's how I became an environmental health officer.
That's great to hear. It's cool to know that it's so varied as well. Thanks for sharing. I think we'll take another question. So, what is the best thing about your job?
Well, the best thing I find is that it's quite varied. So although I do specialise in air pollution, I do some other things as well. So I do some cover things like noise pollution, and also we try and help people with any complaints they've got about pollution in their area. So it's quite varied. I feel as if sometimes I'm still learning quite a lot because of all these extra studies and extra things we're finding out about air pollution as time goes on. It's not the same type of work that I did when I first became an environmental health officer. So it's good. And it's also good because sometimes I work in the office and sometimes I get to go out and about to visit the machines to make sure they're working okay. So it's good to sometimes be in the office and out and about as well.
Brilliant. We'll take another question now. So, are there any types of pollution that become much worse or much better during your career?
Well, the pollution from road traffic, believe it or not, has got better since I started specialising in this. And that's because if you think of all the cars and vehicles on the road, eventually cars don't last forever. And some of the older vehicles fall off and basically go to the car heaven, old car heaven. And then people think, oh, and when they buy a car, the car they buy is newer and it has a cleaner engine in it. So although we still have problems with road traffic pollution, it is getting a bit better as the years go on naturally. And also there are works underway with things like electric vehicles and that are also helping to make pollution from that side of things a bit better.
Brilliant. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that changes over the next few years.
Yeah.
Cool. So I think we'll take another question. So from Inger Rice, how does litter pollute the environment and air quality?
Well, that's an interesting question. Well, when you're looking at the environment as a whole, obviously the air we breathe is only part of that, and pollution by very nature is something that's there that shouldn't be there really, and it's causing harm. And litter is just one example of that, as is air pollution. So although it's not directly what I'm talking about today, it's a very important part of our local environment, and everyone should make attempts not to drop any litter and get involved in any litter pickups or anything in your area that you feel you're interested in.
Absolutely, that's a great question. I think we'll take another one. So what's the difference between a primary and a secondary pollutant? I think you had an image in your PowerPoint before.
Yeah, that was a very busy picture though. I can explain it in a bit clearer terms if that helps. So basically, a primary pollutant is a pollutant that comes directly from a source. So when I was talking about particles, that's a primary pollutant because it's coming straight from a source. A secondary pollutant is something. It's not directly coming straight from a source. It's formed through a chemical reaction in the atmosphere. So that's it. So, for example, ozone is a secondary pollutant, and that's really the difference. So one comes straight from a source. The other one is formed through a reaction in the atmosphere.
Great, thank you. That's made it really clear. I think we'll take another question. So, do you think air pollution standards will get tougher?
I think they will because the World Health Organization has already recognised that the standards that they had in place, which had been in place for a number of years, they didn't think they were strict enough. So they've already just released last autumn winter some more strict guidelines. So I have to say that in Scotland our air quality is really very good compared to other countries in the world. If you ever see pictures of cities like Beijing, some of the Indian cities as well, and even some of the cities in northern Italy at times, you see a lot of smog and a lot of pollution and lots of people, can't see very far in front of them. So the pollution in these places is very visible, and I just don't know. Obviously, we have to be prepared. That we have to remember Scotland that the air quality is good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, quite lucky here.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll take another question. So you've touched on things we can do to cut down air pollution, like short journeys and not using their cars. But are there any other ways people could have a positive effect on air pollution in their local area?
Yeah. So, well, yeah. I mean, I did mention some of them already, but just to go over, if you can, you could walk, cycle, or scooter to school. Maybe you can see if your school has a school travel plan and get involved in that to find out how to make it easier for you to walk, cycle, or scooter to school. Um, you can also use public transport instead of the car, so using the bus or the train, um, or you could see if your parents would like to car share going to work. Now, it's not always practical to do this. I do understand, and I'm not sitting here saying, "Oh, you must do this." But if everyone can do just a little, then it does all add up. You could see if there is anywhere in the local area that could you could ask for the pollution reducing shrubs or trees. You could find out if any of them are in your area. You could find out if there's anywhere suitable to put them in your area. This may or may not be able to happen, but it's worth asking as well anyway. Um, so things like if you're don't have loads of bonfires and different things, because although wood smoke does smell nice, it does also contain particles as well. I'm not saying it's super dangerous because you are outside. I'm just saying that if everyone has fires all the time, then it does make a bit of an impact on the air pollution, I'm afraid.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a good one to note going into the summer as well. Thank you for sharing that. I think we've got another question. So would I be able to see if there was lots of pollution and what kind of pollutants are visible?
Well, most pollution is a lot of pollution is invisible, but the more obvious pollution that you can see would be smoke from a fire or from a chimney, um, or you can also see if there's any sort of wind-blown dust from maybe a quarry or even sand from the beach, or you can get dust blown off fields and things when it's particularly windy. Um, so there's that sort of thing. But also these larger visible pollutants quite often will get trapped in your upper airways, so in your nose or at the back of your throat, and maybe cause you to cough and or sneeze. and that is your body's way of getting rid of these big pollutants. The ones that are slightly more dangerous are the ones that you can't see. So they're the ones, that's why we monitor the tiny particles and the nitrogen dioxide gas, because you can't really see it. If you can see pollution, it's generally going to be less harmful than the stuff you can't see.
That's good to know. Thank you very much. So we are coming to the end of our session. So thank you very much, Fiona. That was really interesting. And thank you to our audience as well for all your questions. If you do want to learn more about air pollution or have an explore of other climate change topics, you could go onto the Curious About our website. So that's curiousabout.glasgowsciencecentre.org. We also have a few other sessions happening today and tomorrow. You'll also see a link going into the chat box about a survey to let us know what you think of the festival. But until next time, goodbye.